Welcome to week 3 of MPAI 600 here at Georgetown University School of Continuing Studies. Just quick announcements to start off. I just want to make sure these dates are clear for everyone. So 25 November, groups 1 to 3 are going to be briefing, and we'll do that at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I just want to emphasize that's the Sunday after Thanksgiving. So I know people are on holiday and there might be issues with travel, but I just want to get that knocked out on that Sunday night. So again, you can get credit for that assignment. I just want to remind you, if you're briefing, you will not be doing assignment 2. The briefing is assignment 2. You will not be doing a paper, so I can't emphasize that enough. And then on 11 December, we're going to flip flop. So groups 4 through 6 are going to be doing assignment 3 in a briefing, and then if you're not briefing, you'll obviously be doing a paper. So I want to make sure everyone's clear on those dates. If there's any issue or confusion, let me know. But again, I want to make sure that you can do a presentation and a group presentation, which is a requirement for this program, as well as which is a requirement for the program. So, there's questions or issues, please let me know. And then paper 1, the collection strategy is due, depending on when you're watching this right now, maybe yesterday. So make sure that's get that knocked out. And I'm traveling this week, so I want to have that back to you by the end of the week, or maybe into the weekend as well. So just get that to me now, and I've gotten no requests for extensions. So current events, Pittsburgh shooting. I taped last week's just before that happened. So, and it seems almost like a million news cycles now with everything that's going on. But as everyone knows, I think there was a shooting in the Jewish Center in Pittsburgh. And we have something like this. I'm not going to get into the gun control issue here. But what is relevant to the course is, particularly when we talk about terrorism and lone wolves, everyone says, the signs were there. It was so obvious that he was there. Whether it's this, whether it was the bomber from last week, there's plenty of indications that something was wrong. But, is there enough to prevent them from arresting somebody, from detaining them, from not allowing them to purchase a gun or purchase some other equipment that can be done harmful? In a free society, it's almost impossible to do that. It's always impossible, almost impossible. If this had been terrorism, or this had been Islamic terrorism, let's be honest, again, there'd be a lot different questions asked. But, let's pretend this is Fort Hood or another Islamic terrorist incident. There's two things people want to know. So, can you cross-check people who are on the no-fly list and people who purchase guns, which we're not doing right now? So you're on the no-fly list for one reason or another, but you can still walk in and buy an AR-15. A lot of people want to restrict that. I'll let you decide whether that's an infringement on our Constitution or whether it's applicable safety. So that's one perspective. But the other perspective that I don't think will fly in our society is, okay, someone pops hot on a no-fly list, or we found them doing something suspicious. Let's say they're surfing jihadist websites or surfing right-wing websites. We would like to backtrack their gun purchase history. It would be a pretty big indicator if someone's searching on ISIS websites on Monday, but last Friday he purchased 10 AR-15s. That would be an indicator that something is wrong. The problem with that is that would require a national gun registry. So you can backtrack when people are purchasing their guns. I don't think there is political will to do that. And then we can argue whether it's constitutional or not. But let's just say if that were to happen, that would help out intelligence and law enforcement considerably. But again, I don't think that will happen in our political climate. And I'll just leave it at that. So again, whenever you have one of these shootings, the question comes up, you should have known. Their indicators were there, but really, are theirs can you stop something like that in our free society? So, review of last week. I'm sorry, I should say week two, review of last week, review of week two. So, I went into the requirements. You've integrated into the collection plan. I've answered some of your questions on that, and again, I look forward to your collection strategies. Intelligence traps. Again, you saw that in the Tradecraft primer. The psychological traps, and I usually teach this class first, so you don't get the intro to the psychology part. But now that you do have this intro to psychology part, you should be very familiar with terms like confirmation bias and mirror imaging. So I shouldn't really have to explain those too much in detail going forward. But we saw that in the Tradecraft primer, and we saw that in the case study. And speaking of the case study, again, classic confirmation bias. You had a theory, and you saw it in the documentary, and then every piece of evidence was used to fit that original theory, no matter how ridiculous it was. When you're talking about the DNA, when you're talking about these random people setting up with the actual killer to set up a bizarre scenario, that is confirmation bias, probably taken to an extreme. And again, a lot of you brought up Detective Ford and on his issues, but I remind you, juries, lawyers, appellate courts, prosecutors all fell under these issues that came up. Vividness bias. You saw that in the confession. A cop knows, an investigator knows, the best way to get a conviction is a confession, particularly one as vivid as was played in front of the juries, as you saw in that documentary. Even though those confessions were bogus, the way that they were portrayed swayed the jury. We're going to see vividness bias over and over again, whether it's the run-up to the Iraq WMD scenario or other of the case studies where vividness trumps logic. Vividness trumps facts. Just this week, again, I'm bringing up the caravan again, but the visuals of the caravan and depending on what you see it, some people see scariness in those, will always trump the logic and the risk assessment and where is this a real threat in the real world. Clientelism. You guys brought that up in this class, and I suspect maybe it was brought up in the psychology class because a few people brought it up. Another way to say this is perverse incentives. Prosecutors are there, detectives are there to get that arrest, to bump up their arrest record, to get the conviction. They're not there, oftentimes, unfortunately, to serve justice and make sure justice is done, that the right person is convicted. They're there to push the envelope. And we're going to see that in future case studies regarding politicization and whether information is skewed to serve a greater, or incentivized to be skewed to serve a supposed greater purpose. And then finally, the Georgetown values. I don't know how much this matters to people. I don't know how religious people are, Catholic or Jesuit, but Georgetown does have values of justice and social justice. And one thing to, again, take away from this, there was a grave injustice committed in this documentary. Only until a few months ago were these people, their convictions vacated. In the documentary, you saw that they were let go in 2009, but only in 2018 were their convictions expunged. And again, these poor people got their lives essentially railroaded because certain people didn't want to do the right thing. And again, I don't know if it's a religious thing. I don't think, certain ethical guidelines doesn't need to be religious based, but obviously there was injustice here committed. So week 3 preview, we're going to talk about strategic surprise. And this is where I mentioned in the first week, history starts coming into this class. I think history gives us a guide. It might not give us exact science, but it certainly history rhymes. And the lessons that you'll see here repeat themselves over and over and over again. And you're going to see failures, in Pearl Harbor, failures in the Yom Kippur War, come into the failures of 9/11, and come into the failures of the Russia attack on our election in 2016. Those same issues will keep popping up as we go through these case studies. So Pearl Harbor and the Yom Kippur War are the two case studies. Pearl Harbor, I think everyone's familiar with. Yom Kippur War was the Israeli vaunted Israeli intelligence service was surprised by two known enemies conducting a surprise attack on their borders or on Israel's border. And we're going to look at how this happened. So as you go through the failures, look at the intelligence cycle and ask, where did the breakdown occur and what were the cascading effects? That's what I want in your head when you're going through the documentaries and going through the readings. Where did the failures occur? Where is it a failure in, I'll bring it back up, in collection, where there was not enough assets, not enough resources dedicated to collection? Was there enough collection, but there was too much information, or the information wasn't analyzed right? Was there a problem on the policy side, where the intel was accurate, but the policymakers either weren't receptive to it or they didn't act on it? And then was it just underlying circumstances? Sometimes just stuff happens. Everyone does everything right, but the wrong decision is made because, again, just accident of circumstances. I want you to think about this as you're going through it. I want you to decide, make the call where you think the failure occurred on the chain. And then the readings in the documentary, The Doll, excellent book. It'll talk about the Pearl Harbor case study, and then when we shift over to terrorism, it'll talk about we'll talk about 9/11, and it'll talk about the post 9/11 issues. So that's a cornerstone book of this course. I deleted the National Geographic Pearl Harbor. It shouldn't be there. I apologize. That's something that there weren't enough copies, so I had to go ahead and delete that from the writing. I apologize. That shouldn't be there. The Yom Kippur, the Avi Shalim, which is a key figure on what happened with the Yom Kippur War. Why was the Israeli intelligence service essentially caught flat-footed? And then the Al Jazeera documentary on the Yom Kippur War will not only just give you an overview of the war, but will also give you an overview of the intelligence failure. It's actually a 3-part documentary. I've only assigned the first part, or it's a 2-part. I've only assigned the first part for this course. So, if there's any questions or issues, please let me know. And I look forward to your discussion posts.